Good evening. Two developing stories lead the news tonight. Hurricane Bob is churning off the coast of North Carolina and could touch land tonight. Tens of thousands of people are evacuating the threatened areas. We will have a full report in a moment. But we begin with the turbulence on Wall Street, with the giant securities firm of Salomon Brothers under investigation for improper trading of Treasury bonds. The top executives in the company did what they could today to restore public confidence. ABC's Karen Burns has the story.
It happened behind closed doors, but the top officers of Salomon Brothers did what they promised on Friday. They resigned. The powerful players in the $2.2 trillion treasuries market were replaced by Omaha billionaire Warren Buffett. Buffett, whose company Berkshire Hathaway put $700 million into Salomon in 1987, will now step in as chairman and CEO of the firm.
Today we accept the resignations of John Goodfriend and Tom Strauss and John Merriweather.
Earlier today, the US Treasury Department announced that it had suspended Salomon Brothers from participating in the auction of new issues. But apparently, when Chairman Buffett heard the news, he personally called Treasury Secretary Nick Brady, telling him such action would be harmful to his firm and assuring him that he would cooperate fully with a government investigation. Late today, the Treasury Department rescinded its decision, leaving Salomon a primary dealer in the government securities market. The worst scandal in the firm's 81-year history was revealed when Salomon disclosed that it had violated 4 and possibly 5 bidding rules in several Treasury auctions, and that its traders made 2 bogus bids, one for $1 billion in securities as a practical joke. Chairman John Goodfriend, President Thomas Strauss, and Vice Chairman John Merriweather were told about the billion-dollar bid in April. The violation should have been reported to the government immediately, but it was disclosed just last week. While the initial news sent the firm's stock down about 25%, some securities brokers were not concerned.
It's such a huge market. Having an infraction by one participant, I don't think will have a negative effect on the marketplace or on people like me that invest and deal in these securities.
Salomon Brothers is under investigation by the Treasury Department, the Federal Reserve, the SEC, and the Justice Department. But more important than the fate of the firm itself is the impact their actions could have on the public trust and on the credibility of the American market worldwide. When asked how this could have happened, Warren Buffett said, "Call it macho, call it cavalier, but this would not have happened in a monastery." Karen Burns, ABC News, New York.
Now Hurricane Bob. From North Carolina to Massachusetts, coastal alerts are up as the storm moves northward. Forecasters are saying Bob, which now has winds of over 100 miles per hour, is very dangerous and could touch land at North Carolina's Outer Banks by late tonight. ABC's Linda Patillo is in Nags Head, North Carolina.
The first of the hurricane's winds hit the North Carolina coast late this afternoon as nearly 100,000 tourists evacuated a 100-mile stretch of resort beaches. Traffic backed up for miles on the only roads leading off the Outer Banks, a string of barrier islands off the North Carolina coast. This is the height of the tourist season here. All 100 rooms were booked at this Nags Head hotel last night. By this morning, it was empty.
This is it. They'll probably end up canceling their vacation here and travel elsewhere.
Even longtime residents were boarding up and leaving. Ever since Hurricane Hugo devastated South Carolina 2 years ago, many coastal residents have a new respect for the power of hurricanes. The last storm to hit this area was Hurricane Charlie in 1986. Its winds were much weaker than Bob's, but it still killed 1 person and caused $250,000 in damage. This storm is expected to take a heavy toll on thousands of farmers. Next week is the start of the corn harvest. Farmers work through the night to save what they could of this year's crop.
We're going to run this thing until it rains on us. If it takes all night or all day tomorrow, whatever, she's going to keep right running.
There are also fears that if Bob aims directly at Cape Hatteras, a national landmark could be lost. The Cape Hatteras Lighthouse could be right in the storm's path. Linda Patillo, ABC News, Nags Head, North Carolina.
Let's get a fix on Hurricane Bob's movements at this hour. Bob Sheets is director of the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables. Bob, give us a sense of where the hurricane is and how it's moving.
Well, first, it's increased markedly in strength here this afternoon. It's now a Category 3 hurricane and now approaching the Outer Banks of North Carolina. The eye of the hurricane is right here. You see it on satellite. It's going to pass very close to Cape Hatteras and then parallel the mid-Atlantic states and then probably up to New England by tomorrow night. It's going very fast, and therefore we have now put up warnings all the way up through New England.
You say Category 3. How bad is that?
That's a winds of about 115 miles per hour. Now, we're not going to get those kind of winds over on the mid-Atlantic coast there because it's on the weaker side of the hurricane. But out here over the open water, and then perhaps even up to New England, we may get 90 to a mile per hour winds or so.
So it's going to graze across Cape Hatteras on the weaker side, but how bad will that likely be?
Well, on Cape Hatteras itself, they could get the full force of this hurricane. There's not much out there to stop that, so probably in the 100 mile per hour kind of time frame. Now, as you get on over in the mid-Atlantic coast, barely hurricane force winds there. A lot of wave action, erosion. Get up into New England, it'll be weakening slightly, but probably hurricane force conditions up there also.
People, of course, have been advised to evacuate, and that would be a very good idea, I think, right?
Off of the Outer Banks, I hope that they've already evacuated by this stage.
Now, as it moves along up the coast, Bob, it could continue to turn and strike all the way up there, couldn't it?
Yes, we hope that it'll continue out to the northeast, but we're not all that confident, and that's the reason we've extended the warnings all the way up to New England at this time. Again, the mid-Atlantic states are just barely going to get hurricane conditions and could get those hurricane conditions, but with the rapid acceleration, the fact it'll be there by tomorrow evening, we had to put up warnings in that area.
Bob Sheets, Director of the National Hurricane Center in Coral Gables, Florida. Thank you very much, Bob.
Okay. Thank you.
And coming up, Israel says a hostage deal could be months away. And later in this broadcast, a bitter showdown in California over how to redraw congressional districts. And a cruel choice for a